Okay, let's start with nurses and then move on to Northern Ireland. Do you support them striking?
They've got the right to strike, but actually they shouldn't be striking. I mean, if the conditions were right and the government had been managing the situation right, they would have been speaking to them all over the summer and they would have been trying to deal with the circumstances that have led to this. And don't forget, this isn't just a singular issue about pay. This is about the economy as a whole. Because had the government taken the Labour Party's energy price freeze when we announced it in the summer, nurses would have an extra 500 quid in their bank. If they hadn't blown the economy up in the mini-statement, they would have had an extra £600 that they've lost on most people's mortgages. So there's a lot of pressures on nurses right now, and government needs to get around the table with them to try and facilitate a way forward and not run away from the negotiations, which can only solve this problem.
Do you support the strike action?
I support their right to strike. I wish, but what I can't do is say that this strike action is right, because it shouldn't be happening, because government shouldn't have allowed it to happen.
What about nurses in Northern Ireland? Who can they talk to?
Well, exactly. They should be talking to the devolved administration because it is devolved. And don't forget that 1 in 4 people in Northern Ireland are on a waiting list for treatment in the NHS. 1 in 4 people. Things have reached a really chronic stage. There is no bigger illustration as why devolution and Stormont needs to get up and running quickly.
So I'm sure you heard the Northern Ireland Secretary saying that he feels that there shouldn't be an election at the moment because he's listening to people and they don't want it yet.
Well, the problem is he keeps changing his mind, so that creates more instability. You know, instability in Northern Ireland is the last thing you want. So Chris Heaton-Harris said that there would definitely be elections called the Friday before last, and he didn't call them, and then he changed his mind again. But I'm going to support him in this action because we need both parties here in Westminster to come together to provide some kind of stability going forward. But let's not pretend that what's happening in Northern Ireland is separate from what's happening in the negotiations between the UK and the EU. The protocol negotiations are absolutely central to this. So it really confounds me, it surprises me and concerns me that Chris Heaton-Harris thinks that he can leave the negotiations to the Foreign Secretary and have no contact with the Foreign Secretary. If it was me, I would be gluing myself to the Foreign Secretary and I'd be with him every step of the way in those negotiations, being the voice of parties in Northern Ireland, and then I would convene all parties together and brief them continuously on progress and listen to what they say and feed it back in.
How are you going to fix the Northern Ireland Protocol if you were Northern Ireland Secretary?
Well, it's quite clear that the way forward on the Northern Ireland Protocol has always been the same. We need to make sure we just made solid progress on data sharing and then veterinary services and then other individual sectors that are being affected by it. The EU put its announcements down a year ago. The UK put its proposals 15 months ago. And for large parts of it, there's total overlap. These seem to be the only negotiations that are failing because everybody seems to agree on the core things, and yet there's such dysfunction in that relationship, they can't get it over the line. Maroš Šefčovič, the EU negotiator, said 2 days ago here in London that it could all be sorted in 3 weeks if they all applied themselves and were willing to make the concessions necessary on both sides. They said the same thing 15 months ago. So the question is, when do they start that 3-week process with the conviction it takes to get it across the line? There's no way around this. Diligence, graft and statecraft is needed to do this. All the things that Keir Starmer has in abundance, all of the things this Tory government seem to be lacking.
But the Prime Minister looks to be picking a fight with the Europeans, saying that most of European law will be scrapped by the time we come to the next election. Why should the Europeans feel that they want to negotiate with us over the Northern Ireland Protocol?
Well, we have left the EU, so the government is trying to separate ourselves from all of the legislation, which legally we have the right to do. What we don't have the right to do, incidentally, we think it's irresponsible to do that because the burden it places on business and also means that it makes it more difficult to get deals with the EU because we're going to diverge so radically from a lot of the single market regulation. But that's a separate issue. The thing that is a real barrier is the protocol bill that's going through the House of Lords at the moment, because that protocol bill will unilaterally dismiss the European Court from Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland does have access to the single market, which is regulated and is overseen by the ECJ. By doing that, they break international law because they break unilaterally the treaty we signed with the EU. If we do that, there will be consequences. It might even be that the EU withdraws the single market from Northern Ireland because they say that they're no longer able to enforce it.
Brandon Lewis said that we would break international law if necessary.
That was over something different, Kay.
Oh, was it?
Yes, yeah, I know. Brandon Lewis said that we were going to break the law in a limited and specific way over the internal market bill, which over the internal market bill. Incidentally, he's now Justice Secretary.
No,
so
he's not.
Oh. Is he not?
No, no.
Oh, no, he's been sacked since then, isn't he?
No, he certainly isn't part of government.
So I've made the decision that I'm not even going to learn who the Cabinet are until after the budget, because I think the whole lot might collapse again after the budget. So I'll learn the Cabinet if they're still in place after that.
OK, talk to me, if you would, about the fact that nurses are having to use food banks.
It's appalling. The Trussell Trust said this morning that 1.5 million emergency food packages have been dispensed in recent months. You know, it just shows that... the government are incapable of running our public services. We've got 7.5 million people waiting for treatment for the NHS. They can't run the economy. They blew a hole in the economy. They've got a £45 billion gap they're still trying to close, which they did themselves. That's a crisis made in Downing Street, being paid by workers up and down the country.
But the Prime Minister's trying to fix it now.
But well, he's fixing their own mess, and everybody's going to pay for it. Nobody was talking about cuts and austerity before the mini-budget. Nobody was. This is a result of Tory policy. They've broken the economy. They are breaking our public services. Our relationships around the world are strained, sometimes to breaking point. Our trade deal with the US is off. Our trade deal with the EU is straining. We're not being able to build on it because it's dysfunctional. Growth in this country has been stagnant, and because we have low growth, we have high taxes. Our economy is being badly run. Our public services are being mismanaged. It really is time for a fresh start. Yeah, there are challenges all around the world, aren't there? It's not just the economy here in the United Kingdom. But only one country around the world has had 3 prime ministers in 6 months. Only one country in the world has had 3 chancellors in 6 months. Only one country in the world that's comparable to Britain has just blown a hole in its public finances and unnecessarily caused a £45 billion hole in its public finances by doing unfunded tax cuts, rattling the markets and crashing the cost it costs for government to borrow. 3 prime ministers in 7 weeks, actually. Gavin Williamson, where are we with him? Well, I think Gavin Williamson just shows that Rishi Sunak either has very bad judgment or he's making decisions that aren't in the interest of the country just simply to keep his backbenchers happy. What we see with the decisions that Rishi Sunak's made with his cabinet is he's put organisers and fixers into departmental jobs, not because they're good at running departments, but because they're good at fixing problems on their own backbenchers. So 3 former chief whips are now running government departments. We've got Grant Shapps. What do you think about him? He doesn't seem to be a very nice bloke. No, well, he's not, but I think we all know that now. I don't need to labour the point. We've all known it. I mean, I've seen him sort of, sliming his way around Parliament, and I've never really understood why he intimidates people. I see him as a sort of, a sort of tin pot bully. I have no idea why he was able to have the influence over his party that he did, because I just assume if he tried with me what he's been trying with other people, you would just see straight through it. It wouldn't happen. But also, I look at our chief whip. We're not supposed to talk about the chief whip, but, we have such respect for our chief whip. The relationship is a tough relationship. It is straight down to business. It's somebody who commands respect. He doesn't bully people into respect. He earns the respect. But we have a series of chief whips on their side that seem to resort to crass bullying and coercion at the drop of a hat. So that's why it keeps tipping over in the House of Commons. Now, your opposite number tells me that lots of MPs and members of the House of Lords have downloaded the I'm a Celebrity app in order to vote for Matt Hancock time and again. Have you? No. I want nothing to do with it. Look, I'm very severely dyslexic. When I heard that Matt Hancock had used the excuse of dyslexia for going on there, I was really upset by it, because I want dyslexia to be associated with success. For those of us who have neurological challenges and we overcome them, I think we all acknowledge that it gives us something positive in life, because what you learn by overcoming challenges is a pathway to success very often. What Matt Hancock has done is once again just associated dyslexia with failure. And I hate that. I just wish that we could get back to the point where we're talking about the positive attributes to some of the barriers that people have in life. Matt Hancock just seems to be always dragging all of the good things in life down into the gutter. It's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme, Peter Cowell. Thank you.